and wish you a happy, prosperous new year. I would like to welcome you to the first Planning Applications Committee meeting of 2026. I'm Councillor David O'Mahony, Chair of the committee. We're not expecting fire drills this evening, but if the alarm sounds, you will be directed to the nearest and safest exit by members of the team. And can I introduce to my left members of the committee? Nearly all there. And we have officers of planning, legal, and democratic services are behind me. Apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chair. We've received apologies for absence tonight from Mary Glowett, who will be subbed by Councillor Julie Hode, and also apologies from Councillor Jonathan Quinn. Also, Councillor Victoria Wheeler is on the way.
Thank you. Members of the committee, are you happy for me to sign the minutes from the last Planning Application Committee held on the 20th of November? Do any members have any declarations of interest that they need to state before we begin? Councillor Whitcroft.
Thank you. Referring to the first application on the agenda for St Catherine's Wood, I need to declare non-pecuniary interest, please, on two grounds. Firstly, I was on the executive at the time of the financial request for the land where the sang is to be purchased, so I need to declare non-pecuniary interest on that basis. And also the fact that I've been to numerous meetings, both with officers from planning and from green spaces and indeed local residents.
Thank you, it's noted. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. It's agenda item 7, that application. I've got a non-pecuniary interest. I've been contacted by parish councillors about it, and I have an email communications with a neighbour and a phone call with a neighbour as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Whitcroft. Councillor Helen Whitcroft, can I just confirm you've actually come to this meeting with an open mind, having made those declarations?
I'm sorry, yes, I should have said yes, I have come to the meeting with an open mind, yeah.
Thank you very much. Councillor Garrett.
Thank you, Chair. Item 7, obviously the applicant is known to me as a fellow councillor, and I obviously come with an open mind. Thank you.
Councillor Valerie White.
Also item 7, this was heard at Windlesham Parish Council a little while ago where they objected to this application. I removed myself from that meeting, so I did not comment. So I come to this meeting with an open mind.
Councillor Whitcroft.
Thank you. I've also been approached about the St Catherine's Sangs on numerous occasions by numerous residents, not to mention officers, but come to the meeting with an open mind. Thank you. Oh, and I've also received an email in respect of, is it item 7, the one in Windlesham?
Oh, that's blanket. Yeah. I think we've
Oh, is that a blanket? Right,
yeah,
fine, sorry, okay.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. Similarly, I've had the same email from the neighbour regarding item 7.
Councillor Wheeler.
Oh, I do. Again, apologies for being late. I'm so pleased that so many people had declarations of interest. I made it in time. I also would like to make everybody aware that I've been contacted by the neighbours relating to this property and also neighbours and residents for actually I think almost every application this evening, but I come to it with an open mind.
Thank you very much. Councillor Rise, you're not on the committee, but Thank you. Members, any other declarations? First up, item 4, St Catherine's Wood, St Catherine's Road, Frimley. Mr Carty, would you be able to introduce the application?
Thank you, Chair. This proposal relates to a woodland area between Frimley Green and Deep Cut, falling within the countryside and extending to about 30 hectares. The site is owned by this council. The current proposal is to provide a sang. The proposal would also provide parking to serve the development. This development is very important for the borough because it would provide the sang solution for the west of the borough for the emerging local plan period for the west of the borough, supporting the delivery of new housing in this part of the borough and the wider delivery of housing to support the provision of a 5-year supply of housing for the borough. Whilst it is not designated in the local plan, it has been identified in the supporting evidence base. It would provide a public open space in perpetuity, which is for 125 years. Please find the update. I will address the proposed additional condition later in this presentation. This condition is proposed condition 20, so a further amendment to condition 12 to reflect this will be required. I will now lead you through the plans and photos. So the site location plan is on the left-hand side of the slide. There is a tree preservation order on the site, and parts of the site are within the Richmond Hill Site of Nature Conservation Interest and an SNCI. So properties in St Catherine's Road and the wider settlement of Frimley and Frimley Green lie to the west. Properties fronting Lake Road and St Catherine's Road lie to the south. Further properties lie off Bellew Road to the southeast. Military land, including St Cross's House, lie to the north. And this land beyond includes parts of the larger Frith Hill SNCI. The right-hand image is the LiDAR plan for the site, showing the higher land around Richmond Hill in yellow and the steeper elements around Richmond Hill, and the V-shaped ravine shadowed. The left-hand image is an extract from the local plan proposals map. The application site is outlined in black on that plan. The hatched areas, including the northwest and east parts of the application site, form a part of the site of nature conservation importance, a county level designation. The right-hand image classifies the habitats on the site more broadly, and the area in brown is lowland mixed deciduous woodland, and the area in yellow is coniferous woodland. This relates to the Deep Cut development sites. This slide has been provided to indicate how this sang sits amongst the open spaces within that development. The areas 5A, 5B and 5C relate to the southern sang. The black down playing field is 5H. The black down angst, which is at accessible natural green space standard, is 5G, and the northern part of the sang, northern part of 1 is the central sang. The angst is not a sang but provides open space for walkers and dog walkers, but does not have a circular path or any parking. The current proposal sits to the west of the angst and links into the network of these open spaces, which will provide pedestrian access between Deep Cut and Frimley Green to the west. This plan indicates the sang catchment areas for the borough's sangs. Major residential development needs to be within the catchment of a specific sang, with minor developments able to use any sang. The borough boundary is outlined in the thicker black line. Those sangs with any significant sang capacity currently available include the Windlemere sang in orange and the Chobham sang in purple. The remaining sangs are either full or have very limited capacity now available. This indicates that currently there is very limited capacity in the west of the borough. The new proposal outlined in the broken red line circle for its catchment would provide for a large part of the borough. This area includes Camberley, Frimley, Frimley Green and Mitchett, where most development would be directed under the spatial strategy. Here is the proposed layout, including the circular path in purple, other connecting paths in orange. These paths exist, but some improvements may be required, particularly in the connecting paths to the Bellow Road car park in the east. The blue line is the St Crosses Road, which is to be upgraded to provide vehicle access for properties in Lake Road, but not providing vehicle access to that highway due to rights of access requirements. 2 car parks are to serve the development of St Catherine's Road here and Bellew Road to the east here. There are some, in addition, there are some pedestrian accesses directly into the Sound from the highway network, and some improvements to these access points will be required by Condition 7. This is the proposed St Catherine's Road car park, which would provide 7 spaces. The road running from the access eastwards is St Crosses Road. Vehicle visibility can be achieved to provide safe egress from the access onto St Catherine's Road. This is the proposed Bellew Road car park, which would provide 47 spaces, also with the visibility. The applicant has suggested a further condition phasing the delivery of the Bellew Road car park and an additional condition, and a corresponding amendment to condition 12 is provided on the updates as amended at the start of my presentation. This includes the provision of a first phase, including 27 spaces to be provided prior to use, and a further 20 spaces within a timetable to be agreed under this condition. This would provide a smaller car park on first use and allows a survey of use so that if the larger car park is not needed, a variation could be applied for the deletion of this requirement at this stage. Improvements to the visibility of traffic exiting Bellew Road onto Lake Road is also proposed on the basis of current speed limits and general road speeds on Lake Road. The site visibility requirement shown on the left-hand plan would fall within the ownership of the council or the adopted highway. The areas in pale yellow on the right-hand plan include garden land in private ownership. The proposed conditions also include works to Bellew Road to support the proposal, providing two-way traffic and stopping vehicle traffic north of the proposed car park. These matters are also subject to the traffic regulation order process with the county, part of the requirements of the deep cut legal agreement to provide or fund other traffic calming measures on Bellew Road instead. There are 2 elements to the TRO or TROs for Bellew Road. One is to close the road to vehicle traffic where currently it is one-way northwards, just north of the proposed east car park on Bellew Road, and making the section of road between the closure points and the dwellings to the south two-way, replacing the current one-way system. The access to Bellew Road car park would also provide a turning head for traffic being diverted southwards at this point on the closure of the road to vehicle traffic further north on Bellew Road. Bellew Road has been subject to vegetation encroachment at ground and tree canopy levels, reducing the road to single track north of the residential properties, which would need to be cleared back to provide a two-way highway. It needs to be noted that the proposed SANG and the Bellew Road car park could be delivered with or without the TRO. Any adjustment to conditions to vary the vehicle and movement arrangements on Bellew Road could be considered under applications to vary these conditional requirements. This is a slide of St Catherine's Road. And this image shows the provision of the footway between the pedestrian access from Queensway at this point to the south, connecting with Ely Close at this point and up to the Sang site at this point here. And that's just for comparison, the general layouts in that area. So here are some site photos showing the paths ready made. Most of the works of these paths will be maintaining them for pedestrian use. Here are views of the sightings of the car parks. On the left, St Catherine's Road, on the right, Bellew Road. Here are photos of St Crosses Road, which closer to St Catherine's Road on the left and further up onto Richmond Hill on the right, which has been encroached by vegetation, principally rhododendron, which would need to be cut back but for its southern section towards Lake Road, a new surface will be required. So the application would deliver a SANG supporting the delivery of new housing in this part of the borough and the wider delivery of housing and the provision of a 5-year supply of housing for the borough. There are no statutory objections to this proposal. The guidance for SANG delivery in the SPA SPD indicates that provisions of car parks would be a requirement for a SANG of this size, and it's likely that without parking it may not be supported by Natural England. The county car park guidance does not provide specific guidance for parking requirements for SANG. The level of car park has been assessed against the Windermere SANG, and the level of provision is comparable with that SANG. However, the additional condition, to phase the Bellew Road car park provision would allow an assessment of need before the second phase is provided. The application is therefore recommended for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Carty. Just to mention, a couple of people have said the audio is not particularly good in the public area. This is being videoed. It is going to be available on YouTube for your viewing, either live now or later on. And to move on, we have a number of public speakers on this application tonight. I would like to ask Peter Bowden. If you can come up, he'll be speaking as a representative of the Bellew Road and Blackdown Road Residents Association. Mr. Bowden, you have 4 minutes to make your presentation. The little box in front of you, if you press that, the box in front of you, you press the button on there, red light comes on, and you can start whenever you're ready, and your 4 minutes will start from then.
I'm the Vice Chair of the Bellew and Blackdown Road Residents Association. We support the SANG but object to the Bellew Road car park. As you'll no doubt have seen, we and our residents have lodged numerous objections. These have been ignored by the Council. Despite unanimous opposition and repeated offers to work together to find safer solutions, residents feel this application is being steamrolled through. I'll detail the implications of approving it as is. The application documents and the officer's report contain contradictory statements and factual errors. All applications should be accurate, otherwise approval would be based on incorrect information. In 1989, this council determined that the blind bend on Bellew Road was dangerous and with the agreement of the police made that section one way. Residents have raised concerns about the future risk of accidents if this section is two-way again. Historically, there have been no accidents in Bellew Road because the council made it one way. The council do not own the east side of the road, so cannot improve visibility and make the bend safer than it was in 1989. Making it two-way because it suits the council will knowingly recreate the dangerous situation and accidents will result. The application contravenes the Highways Act. It shows cars going the wrong way down the one-way road, and the report states that there will be two-way traffic from the car park. County Highways said the car park must not be opened unless and until the existing one-way order has been changed via the TRO. The report states that's unreasonable and unnecessary, yet the plan relies on it. The application is flawed as it has a material dependency on the TRO, which County Highways have said may not be successful, as it was some 20 years ago. There is no plan B if the TRO fails. The proposal is incomplete. I have driven out of Bellew Road to Lake Road more than anyone else in the last 12 years, so I'm the most qualified person to comment on it. My experience is more relevant than a visibility diagram. Highways will tell you that by cutting vegetation, the junction will conform to a standard. I am telling you it will not solve the problem. The bends in Lake Road hide cars. Adding to the traffic exiting Belly Road is incomprehensible to the residents who know and use the junction each day. We implore the council to listen to us. The proposal will cause accidents. The predicted peak car park times coincide with the rush hours. This knowingly creates the perfect storm. The situation will become materially worse when Mindenhurst is fully occupied. The proposal is irresponsible and reckless. The council will not maintain the junction. The need to cut back vegetation was agreed with the councils in October, but was not done for 2 months. Commitments to cut back vegetation carry no weight as it is not done today. There has been no analysis of current traffic in Belly Road. The application predicts there would be 111 trips per day to the Eastern Car Park, so 222 movements if the road is closed, which is described as minimal. The current average is 20, so that's a 1,000% increase. The council are leaving the residents of a private road with the ongoing maintenance bill for access to a council facility. We remain ready and willing to discuss alternative car park locations and improvements to the plan with anyone who is serious about road safety. This plan must, 1, be subject to the TRO. If the TRO fails, the plan must be amended and resubmitted. 2, legally absolve homeowners of the ongoing road maintenance liability. Better still, listen, adopt our alternative ideas in a safer plan, and almost all of our objections go away. Some residents said we were wasting our time objecting to the application. If approved and the inevitable accidents happen, we will know we did everything we could, and it will be a matter of public record that the council were warned. I will also add that the plan has changed in the last 2 hours, and we have no documentation. We've had no benefit of seeing any plan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bowden. Members, do you have any questions for points of clarification of the Speaker? Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you, and thank you for coming this evening. You mentioned that it's a private road and that the residents are responsible for the maintenance of it. Historically, I know that's created some challenges in other areas. Are you responsible for the maintenance from where the proposed car park is back to the main road?
We are responsible. The deeds of my house, and I believe my neighbours, is the frontage of my property out to the middle of the road.
Members, any other questions of the Speaker? Mr. Bowden, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Do I need to press something?
Please. Thank you. Thank you very much. Next speaker is a local resident. I'm going to pronounce this incorrectly. You'll have to. Thank you. How do you pronounce it? Yeah, I got that completely wrong. If you'd like to step up here, please. So it's the same criteria as the previous speaker. You can start when you're ready, and you get a countdown for 4 minutes. The device in front of you, press the button, the red light comes on, and you may start whenever you're ready.
I'm here to represent the objections from residents along and near St Catherine's Road. The sang as such is welcome. However, its plans constitute an overdevelopment, which will be detrimental to the existing woodland habitat and to local residents. A large-scale removal of rhododendrons will destroy 3/4 of the current understory and over 40-year-old habitat, and it will disturb and displace long-established wildlife, even if carried out in phases. The shrubs have not caused tree damage. The predominant pines thrive on the sandy soil. Underneath them, native shrubs do not, nor does ground cover, except for bracken. This can be seen in the rhododendron-free areas on the site and across large parts of the adjacent MOD land. Unless proof can be shown for a successful replanting in comparable conditions, there is a high risk of creating nothing but a single-layer woodland deprived of biodiversity. Containing the rhododendrons within the circular route would be a far more sensible and sensitive approach. There is no data to prove that a significant number of dog walkers will be successfully redirected from SPAs, the stated aim of the SANG. Such data from existing SANGs should be supplied, especially to justify the high number of car parking spaces. Allowing dogs to run off lead will simply move the threat of wildlife from one area to another. It can also endanger walking, jogging, and cycling visitors and result in dog mess being left throughout the site. There is insufficient information on which alternative car parking locations were investigated and why they were considered unsuitable. Plans are contradictory. No lighting versus bike rack lighting. Trees that would need to be felled have already been spray marked. This raises serious questions about the consultation and decision-making process. The total planned number of car parking spaces is high, and they raise a number of concerns. The western car park is located next to one and about 20 metres from 3 further residential properties, which will be negatively impacted by frequent comings and goings of cars. No plans for reducing noise and ensuring privacy exist. Please supply. Wild camping, illegal fires, and suspected drug dealings have occurred. Gates being kept open at night will increase the likelihood of reoccurrence. Residents have been the eyes and ears on the ground, but a public car park will require measures to deter antisocial behaviour.
That's 1 minute left.
Drivers leaving the western car park have a poor view of the road because of bends, shrubs, and trees. For transparency, the plans must be amended to accurately represent the clearing work that would actually be needed. St Catherine's Road was never designed to accommodate the ever-growing number of vehicles from new housing developments and drivers trying to avoid congestion elsewhere. Collisions do happen, and the road has become dangerous to walk along for pedestrians of all ages. And now, a proposed car park whose peak times are predicted to coincide with commuter journeys as well as school travel. Attracting yet more cars onto St Catherine's Road without the provision of a safe walkway along its whole length would not only make a mockery of the county's strategy to promote greener travel, it would be utterly irresponsible.
Thank you. Members, do you have any questions of the Speaker to get points of clarification on what was said? Thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for coming up here. If you'd like to on-press the... That's it. Perfect. Democratic Service, do we have any members speaking? Any councillors?
We have another public speaker.
We have one further public speaker on this application in support. Could I ask that the agent, Sasha Wardley? Hi, Sasha. I'm sure you've done this before. You're aware of the protocol. You'd like to start when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. My name is Sasha Wardley. I'm the agent for the application, speaking on behalf of the applicant. As set out in the officer's report, the importance of this application for suitable alternative natural green space, or SANG, cannot be downplayed. The change of use of the site to SANG is fundamental to new housing coming forward within the borough, in accordance with the Council's agreed forthcoming local plan. Without this SANG, the housing allocations cannot be realised, and the Council will continue to be unable to support major residential developments in the west of the borough. As a result, housing land supply will be severely reduced, and the Council will be placed in a weak position to refuse housing on less sustainable, unallocated sites, including those within the Green Belt and other valued open spaces within Surrey Heath. For this reason, the principle of the use of St Catherine's Wood as a SANG is strongly supported by officers. While the benefits of the application are significant, the extent of the works proposed are limited. The majority of the proposed footpath routes already exist, and works are largely limited to landscaping improvement works. 2 car parks are to be created within the existing cleared areas of woodland to support the proposed use, the main off Bellew Road and a smaller car park off St Catherine's Road. A gravel surface is proposed to both to keep the appearance as natural as possible whilst ensuring no damage to vehicles. We have received concerns regarding this application, but it is fair to say that these have not been about the principle of using the site as a sang, but rather have been focused on highway safety, the size and location of the proposed car parks, and any potential impact on trees and ecology. I'd like to highlight that the applicant has met with local residents, has considered all concerns raised, and has worked hard with technical experts to make changes where these have been possible. Changes include a significant reduction in the extent of fencing proposed to address concerns raised regarding impact on wildlife, a new pedestrian footway on St Catherine's Road, and new informal pedestrian crossings here and on Lake Road, visibility improvements to the Bellew Road and Lake Road junction, reinstatement of the full width of Bellew Road and repairs to the road surface, turning space at Bellew Road car park to support the traffic regulation order, and the management plan was updated to include measures recommended by Surrey Wildlife Trust. While it ultimately did not result in a change, a detailed assessment was undertaken of the alternative car park locations put forward by local residents, and these were ultimately discounted due to problems associated with highway safety and more extensive tree loss. Further, the proposed Bellew Road car park remains able to accommodate 47 cars, despite concerns raised that it is too large. This car park will be rarely at capacity, but the size is justifiable when considering the need for the sang to be attractive and able to accommodate peak times on very hot days without causing on-street parking problems. However, if members share these concerns, the applicant has put forward a condition to officers that would allow for the car park to be brought forward in phases. To conclude, this application is in accordance with the Council's agreed strategy for the provision of green space in the borough and is of strategic importance to the Council. Potential harm is mitigated. There are no objections to the application from statutory consultees. The application boasts many benefits, which include the facilitation of the delivery of housing in the borough in locations that are supported by the council, the social and health benefits of providing public open space that will be managed and secured for at least 125 years, significant ecological enhancements and extensive highway safety improvements. It is on these grounds that we respectfully request that planning permission be granted. I welcome questions, and I'm accompanied this evening by Transport Consultant James Marsh, who is available to answer technical questions concerning the proposed highway improvements if necessary. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, do you have any questions for points of clarification for the Speaker or technical backup who's here tonight as well? Councillor Whitcroft.
Thank you, yes. One of the earlier speakers spoke very cogently about the rhododendron issue. And I'd like you just to clarify that, if you would, as to what the actual intentions are in respect of the current crop of rhododendrons, bearing in mind that anybody that's walked down there at the right time of year finds that the display is quite spectacular. That's the proper word, I think. And there is a concern locally that this feature is going to be lost. So perhaps you could just clarify the position of the applicant on that, please.
Yes, of course. Apologies, I didn't turn my mic off, sorry. As was discussed earlier, there is a phased programme for the removal of rhododendron as an invasive species. My understanding that the problems associated with rhododendron as an invasive species are associated with a particular type of fungus that I can't pronounce, and also sudden oak death. For that reason, in the management plan, there are proposals for phased removal of the rhododendron that will take place across several years due to the extent of it. However, with that, there is a phased programme of planting of native species that will maintain there being no ecological impact.
Councillor Whitcroft, does that answer your question? Councillor Wheeler?
Thank you. I suppose there's a couple of concerns. So I'd like to reassure residents that once the sangs are there, I live in an area with a lot of sangs, it's often not as bad as we feel and we fear it's going to be. So please do take some reassurance from that if you can. However, there are areas of concern. One of them is access on an unadopted road. So if my deeds say that I am responsible for half the road and I don't maintain the road and somebody is damaged, I would like to know where the liability sits, because actually the use of that road is increasing as a result of the proposal for it to be used as sangs. So that's point number one. I appreciate the residents' concern about having too large a car park. The drawback from not having a large enough car park is antisocial parking, particularly on a road, and I apologise, I'm not overly familiar. I go past and down the main road and have done for more years than I care to recall, but the side roads off I obviously haven't travelled. If we don't move forward with the car park quickly enough, I would have thought there is a real risk that we could end up with car parking on the unadopted road, which will then not help with visibility space and all the rest of it. But I suppose what I'm looking for from you is the reassurance around that unadopted road and the responsibility thereafter, because I understand, my understanding of it is if it's a privately owned road, very often there are covenants and things that actually stop people going down it. I'm just cognitive of a planning application in West End that came across problems, and I just wondered from your experience where the residents lied both on a culpability and responsibility point of view, but also on potentially a covenant point of view to stop this from happening if they were so minded to do so.
Thank you. I know that the applicant has sought legal advice already concerning the ownership of Bellew Road. And in addition to that, and the position is exactly as you have described it, and was described by public speakers, is that it is maintainable by landowners along their frontage up to the midpoint of the road. As part of this application, it has been identified that repair works would be needed to the road, and that it is secured by condition that we will put forward some works for repair and have that agreed in conjunction with the County Highways Authority. We would get those approved, and at that point, if there is any further legal advice required regarding the implementation of those works, that could be undertaken at that time, and that could also include, as part of condition submissions, we are obviously consulting members of the public on those as well, and that could be something that's done at that stage.
Please do.
Thank you. So I suppose it's about ownership. Who owns that half of the road? Because if I was a resident and I owned it, I would not give permission for that work to be undertaken or for people to travel down it. And have we explored that option, or is that something that's not open to residents?
My apologies. It is a highway that can be used by members of the public. So it is a highway and anybody can use it.
Councillor Garrett.
Thank you. So I think, without putting words into the residents' mouths, I got the impression that Sang itself is not the problem. They have the issue with the parking. But if we don't put the car parking in, then potentially, as Councillor Williams said, people will be parking on the roads, which obviously is not ideal either. I noticed that this site is already woodland with a number of trails and footpaths. So I'm assuming people already use this as an unofficial Sang. Do we know where those people are parking already? And are those car parks already at top level? And if they're not, why do we need a car park so big?
My understanding is that current parking takes place on surrounding lay-bys, both on St Catherine's Road and on Bellew Road. It is agreed that the majority of people will walk to this Sangs, but the applicant has to make this Sangs attractive to users for it to be used so that it is used for its intended purpose. And a key part of that is the car parks. Those car parks, in terms of their locations, have been identified because they connect to the existing paths and desire lines that are there. And they are also beneficial because they are already largely cleared of trees. They do not have significant tree cover. And those are the two main reasons why they have been identified. In terms of the size of the car park at Bellew Road, it is because of concerns associated with those very unusual peak hot summer days where it is not possible to walk dogs apart from before 8 o'clock and after 6 o'clock. And for those times, we just don't want to create on-street parking problems.
Okay, thank you.
Members, do you have any other questions of Speaker? Councillor White?
The first speaker mentioned about the one-way system being put in 1989 and it now being changed. What's changed between 1989 and now other than there being more traffic, and is this going to be safe to have it two-way?
So the proposals for that part of Bellew Road to be two-way, it's a very short section that is currently one-way to the Bellew Road car park. So the proposals for that short section of one-way to become two-way is from the car park down towards Lake Road, and that would only come forward in the event that the traffic regulation order is in place that prevents vehicles from travelling northwards.
So there's a chance that that traffic order will not be put into place, so it would remain one way?
That is correct. Our application supports that traffic regulation order in that the Bellew Road car park provides turning space, for example, for a refuse vehicle, so that it can turn there and then exit again towards the Lake Road. But in the event the traffic regulation order does not come forward, that part would remain one way.
Thank you. Members, do we have any other questions of the Speaker? Sasha, thank you very much for your time. Do we have any councillors who want to speak on this or not? Okay. Members, if you have any questions of the officers on this application, if you'd like to raise your hand. Councillor Wheeler.
Yeah, can I just confirm how many homes this would release in this part of the borough, in terms of what's the SANG capacity? Question number one. And then just other thoughts, really. Living in an area with a lot of SANGs and a lot of car parks, and being very cognitive of the antisocial behaviour, depending on your view, that takes place in those car parks overnight. I do share the residents' concern that these car parks won't be locked. And I just wondered if there is anything we could do once the car parks are open in terms of having some proactive engagement with our local neighbourhood policing team to make sure that they are regularly patrolled. I know that, for example, in Job and Place Woods, through regular activity of combination enforcement and regular police visits, that activity has certainly moved from that particular car park. And I just wondered whether or not proactively there is anything we can do to try and make sure that that is in place. But if I could just have the clarification on the numbers, because it's a really compelling argument for support for the SANGs.
I'm happy to come back on the numbers. So in terms of the overall capacity in housing development that this would provide for, it equates to approximately 1,500 new homes. If you want that in person capacity, because, for example, so it's, and that's why it's critical to 5-year housing land supply and the local plan period as well. In terms of community safety, I'll come on to Duncan. Sorry.
Yeah, because the site's owned by this council, the management of it, broader management of it, and any issues that would come out of antisocial behaviour is something that would be run through our corporate enforcement team, not their planning function, but wider functions. So the idea that they could liaise with the local neighbourhood police would be a good thing we could take back to them for that future event when if it is approved and then it is constructed. But it is a matter which the management of it runs through that team.
Sorry, Chair, just to very briefly come back on that, I wonder if maybe we could have an informative attached to this, that it should be done if possible, given that we're not going to exist by the time that car park exists. Yes. And given the size of the new unitary, I just wonder if that could be in there as an informative. Thank you.
Councillor Garrett.
Thank you. Based on Mr. Bartlett's answer, and I know I should know the answer, but I know he will know the answer, does that mean that this is as in this site, SANG is in the local plan and is one of the things considered as for the SANG for the local plan? And if this didn't go ahead, what effect would that have on the local plan, if anything?
I'll try and give you the short answer of that one. It forms part of what's called the Thames Basin Heath Special Protection Area topic paper, which is part of the evidence base that supports the local plan. And in that, it identifies this SANG as critical to delivering development that's identified in Surrey Heath in the local plan. To be more specific, that is sites in the town centre, so strategic regeneration sites, and all other sites in the west of the borough identified in that plan, with the exception of any site that already has SANG capacity. And it does include sites in the 5-year housing land supply as well.
Councillor Hode.
Thank you, Chair. A two-part question on the car parks topic. Firstly, is there an estimate of what percentage of the total SANG land would actually be used for provision of the two car parks? Is it 1%, 5%, 10% ballpark? And secondly, I'm new to the world of planning. Could someone briefly talk me through what I think was mentioned earlier with the car park, that if I understood correctly, it will be a two-phase thing with a certain number of spaces, and then that would be assessed on demand or usage and then extended if need be? I'm not sure if I understood that part correctly. Thank you.
On the first question, I'm not quite sure. I'll hopefully answer it. Do come back to me if I answer it wrongly, but I'll have a go. The way that the application was put together in terms of the number of parking spaces was set against the Windermere SANG and the provision for that. Now, that was underprovided. It was acknowledged that it was underprovided when it came through. The issue that we have is that the guidance that we've got from county doesn't provide sort of figures that we can work to there. It's certainly a need to have car parking for a SANG of that size. But the actual number is very difficult because it's not set out in the guidance to help us. So what they did is to say, okay, Windermere had to be expanded to this amount, and it's quite conveniently half the size of the SANG under this application. So therefore, you need double the parking at this site compared to Windermere to balance it out. The pros for it, in terms of adjusting, whether it needs to be adjusted because they're two different SANGs in two different locations, we looked at whether Windermere SANG, it's more remote, so you might need to drive there more than perhaps this SANG, because most of it is close to Frimley, that end. Parts of it are closer to Deepcote, not right close to Deepcote. But because this one is considered to be the principal strategic SANG for the borough, the very important SANG for us, and that's going to generate more interest in coming to it, we felt actually that balance, the actual parking that's required for Windermere, that ratio, it works for this one as well, because on one side you've got less remote, but you've probably got more demand, we think, so on balance. But what we sought through the update is a mechanism to provide a part of that car park up front so that it's delivered so that when it's first used and therefore you don't have the issues that Councillor Wheeler was saying about antisocial parking, for example, on Bellew Road. And then we could sort of see whether a second phase at that stage is needed. Now, if it is needed, then they can deliver the second phase, but they can come back to us. There is a flexibility built into the system of planning permissions, where conditions can be varied, and this could be varied if it is felt after survey work that the second part of it is not required. So it allows that mechanism to come forward.
Councillor Whitcroft.
Thank you, Chair. As we heard earlier, most of in fact, I haven't actually come across anybody yet who's against the principle of the saying, and that's whether people live in the local area or a bit further out or whatever. Everybody is in favour of the saying, and if I get the chance, I'll cover the reasons as to why that is a bit later. But the thing that has, as you've heard, that is of huge concern are traffic and road issues. And I have to say that as a local member, and on behalf of the other local members, I think I'd like to express some gratitude to the County Council traffic engineers for the amount of trouble that they've taken in dealing with this particular application. As you heard earlier, there's a reluctance on the part of some local residents to accept the professional views that the county engineers have expressed, insofar as they have not raised any objections to the proposed scheme. And of course, local residents are perfectly within their rights to take that view, and that's a matter which has been discussed very often within this chamber, as every member here will know. I'm not going to get involved in that now, but I would appreciate some input from the county council, whose word is very difficult to overcome, as we know, if it comes to appeals and whatever and forums. I've spent a few idle moments over the course of the last week or so wondering how it would be if the council appealed against its own planning committee decision, and that might be quite an interesting concept, but it's not one that we want to dwell on, I don't think. Anyway, but the strength of argument which comes from the county council is very strong, and I would welcome some input from the county engineer, who's kindly agreed to join us remotely this evening on a number of matters, and the first specifically is that a number of alternative sites for the car parks, I think there were 4 of them in fact, were put forward, and I'd just like his confirmation, if he's able to give it, that those sites were looked at and considered as alternatives before the final 2 were finally agreed. So that's the first point. The second point is there's been some discussion clearly about Bellew Road, and I'd like his input on Bellew Road and the safety aspects that we've heard in that regard. And incidentally, but while I'm speaking about this, I just want to make it clear to members who may not be aware of it that this question of the road closure, which we've heard about, stems actually from some years ago, not anything to do with the SANG initially, but it was to do, or is to do, with the development part of Mindenhurst known as the Sergeant's Mess, which is the area at the top of Bellew Road. And as part of that planning permission granted, I believe, in 2014, that was a term which was included in the Section 106 agreement applied to that application and that approval. So there is a certain difficulty associated with the road closure and the SANG, insofar as the two things are not directly linked, but obviously they have an impact on each other, which complicates matters. And maybe the highway engineers would comment on that as well, if possible, with your agreement, Chair. Thank you.
I find that acceptable. Andy Stoke, are you online? Can you hear us?
I yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, we can hear you loud and clear. If you can answer those questions, Councillor Whitcroft.
Yeah, I'll do my best. So first question, in terms of the car park locations, no, in fact, we weren't made aware of all of the sites that were being considered. We only became aware of the two sites that are now before us for consideration. So no, we weren't aware of what the other two sites may have been. In terms of the Bellew Road aspects, you know, there's very many elements to this. If you go back even further than this planning permission, the previous planning application for the Deshington site back in around about 2000, I think it was 2002, something like that. That also had a requirement for a road closure here. It never proceeded at that time due to an objection by DIO of all bodies, if you like, because they still occupied the Sergeant's Mess, and therefore they felt that it would hinder their ability to operate in the way they wanted to from that site. So it never happened at that time. Bringing it forward to where we are now, as has already been mentioned, the obligation for the closure of Bellew Road lies within the 106 agreement for the Mindenhurst development. The obligation is by way of contribution, financial contribution to the county council, which has been made. The road closure points have been looked at. There is a scheme that is almost complete in terms of design, if not already complete. And so the reason it's not progressed until now is because this application, were it to be approved, provides for an access which in turn would also be able to function as a turning head for, as was mentioned earlier, the turning of refuse vehicles and so on. In terms of the traffic orders, much has been mentioned about traffic orders and the suitability for requiring them from development, and that is actually quite a common thing. There's a lot of development that takes place that does require changes to traffic regulation orders, and it is a separate process. And it is a separate process that needs to be considered once the development is implemented, or as it becomes implemented, if you like. So once the process of implementation starts, that's when we begin to look at it. And so even Mindenhurst, for example, you know, has had many traffic orders and will have more to come. And that development itself was granted on the premise that there were traffic orders that would be needed. So it's not an unusual situation. In this situation, the closure point would require the traffic order changes, as would the development were it to come forward. And as has been said, if the road closure didn't happen, then the Sangs was built, exiting traffic from the Sangs would simply need to go northwards on Bellew Road and then out via Blackdown Road. But conversely, if the road closure does take place, then a traffic order change is needed, and that will be required both for the road closure purpose and for the Sangs purpose. In other words, what that would be needed for is to remove the one-way section of carriageway between the northern boundaries of the residential properties and either the Sangs access or a point equivalent to the road closure. So that I hope that kind of clarifies the traffic regulation order points and the questions that were raised. Whilst I've got the floor, so to speak, I just wonder if it's worth mentioning the Lake Road junction, because I know that's been a point that's been raised so far. I think, as we all know, that junction, for anyone that's used it, that junction at present isn't brilliant. Visibility isn't what it should be, and so I can well understand why residents and local users have found that and see that as problematic. But in the same vein, there is available space both within the applicant's land ownership and within the existing limits of the highway to improve those visibility displays to an appropriate standard. And we're satisfied that once provided, that will enable that junction to operate safely. Clearly, that will be to the benefit of the users of the Sang, but of course it will also be of benefit to anybody else that uses that road, including residents. So hopefully that covers the main issues. If there's any others, I'm quite happy to come back.
Thank you, Andy. Councillor Whitcroft.
Thank you. Yeah, that covers the points very well. Thank you. I should have added another one, if I might, with your indulgence, which concerns St Catherine's Road, about which one of the public speakers told us. There is a concern, as we heard, that St Catherine's Road is, as we can see from the photographs, a rural type of road, which serves Tomlinscote School, amongst other things, and is increasingly busy. There's a particular concern in respect of the bend just before, or just after rather, the proposed car park site. And I wonder if Mr Stokes would be kind enough to comment, A, on the capacity of the road generally, and his view on that as a professional traffic engineer, and secondly on the, as I say, the bend which affects the car parking site on that road. Thank you.
Are you happy for me to proceed, Chair?
Oh, hold on, Mr Stokes.
Yeah, just hang on a sec. Just to say that the blue line on there is the visibility that was shown. Now I think can't read that very well, the actual visibility, but that's the sort of area of blue, sort of forward of the blue line, would provide the visibility for the access.
Andy, you'd like to proceed now?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, so just repeating or following up on Duncan's comment there, yes, the blue visibility display there, the blue line. So the area forward of that blue line to the carriageway is the area that would need to be cut back to provide adequate visibility displays for vehicles exiting the site. In addition to that, we've heard already about the footway being provided on the opposite side of the road to allow people from the residential area to the west to be able to safely use that footway and to be able to then cross to access the Sang. I'm aware of St Catherine's Road. I do know that it gets busy. It's very difficult. There's an awful lot of roads in and around schools in Surrey that do get busy at those times. But the car park that serves this side of the Sang is very limited in numbers. I really don't see that there would be a huge number of vehicles coming in and out of that car park on a daily basis that's going to be hugely detrimental to existing users of St Catherine Road. So for that reason, we're content with the provision of the measures that have been put in to both improve visibility and to safeguard measures for pedestrians.
Thank you, Mr Stokes. Councillor Whitcroft, does that answer your questions?
Thank you, yes.
Councillor Hoff.
Thank you, Chair. It's just a question on the Bellew Road car park and the height barriers that are proposed to obviously stop oversized vehicles entering and using the car park. If the Bellew Road is blocked off and then that car park is expected to be used as a turning head for vehicles coming up Bellew Road to turn round, how would that work with the height barrier? Would they have keys for the bin, like the bin lorries have keys to open that? Would there be an arrangement? And I'm just seeing if there are people using the sang and there's a bin lorry trying to turn in the entrance, it could get a bit messy.
Mr. Darting, I'll leave that to you to answer. How do utility vehicles access height restrictions into the car park? Do they have a key? How does that work?
Unfortunately, that sort of detail is in some of the traffic statement drawings, which we don't have available to display. I think there's a setback, so it was set back behind the turning head for the vehicles to come in. So the actual height restriction would be at a high level. The height restriction is, as you say, to stop the larger vehicles coming in when they're not required. So it's retained as for cars, but it is set back.
Councillor, to answer your question.
So just to clarify, the turning head is technically outside the car park, so you've got the turning head, and then the car park entrance is behind that.
The turning head itself, the access forms part of the turning head itself. So it's just set back, the actual gates and that a little bit set back to allow them to reverse, then come back down the road if the road's closed.
Councillor Garrett.
Just a very short question. There was talk, I believe, about other sites being looked at for car parks. I'm sure that was mentioned certainly by the residents, and I think someone else did. But Mr. Stokes suggested that he was only aware of the two that were picked. So can I just get a clarification on that point, please?
The locations that were put forward, one of them was here, in this location here. So this is heavily wooded and the land drops down. So it's right at the south end.
I don't think that shows.
Doesn't show? Yeah, yes you can. It's just it's a little bit, jumps about a lot. It jumps about, which doesn't help. I can see it on my screen a lot better, but it doesn't help you. And there was two sites off St Catherine's Road, one to the north of the existing car park and one to the south of the existing car park. And I won't try and show it, but...
If I can just come in as well. The key point in terms of tonight's decision is the application that's in front of us, and the Highway Authority commented on the application that's in front of us, and that's why the comments relate to the car parks as proposed, and why the assessment of the officer relates to the car park as proposed. The consideration of alternatives is a landowner-related matter, and it's not something we have to look at this scheme and decide if this should be approved or otherwise.
Members, do you have any further questions? Okay, if there's no further questions, the officer's recommendation is to grant subject to conditions. Could I have a proposer and a seconder? So I'll add to that and the informative.
I was going to say, do we, though, with the change of standing orders, now have to vote on the informative?
I don't think you need to
being
vote on an
included
informative.
Or not? It's only a condition, is it? The informative is fine. Okay, so I was going to say subject to
conditions
Thank
vote,
you.
yeah. Could I have a proposer?
But also the change to the condition 12 that I added at the start of the presentation, just to confirm that.
All conditions, including the one that was added today. Can I have a proposer and a seconder, please? Proposer, Councillor Helen Whitcroft. Do I have a seconder? Councillor David Hoff. Impact Services. Do you want to take the vote?
Thank you, Chair. All those for the officer's recommendation to grant subject to conditions, please raise your hand. And keep your hands raised until I say your name. So we've got Councillor Sean Garrett, Councillor Julie Hode, Councillor Dave Hoff, Councillor David O'Mahony, Councillor Kevin Thompson, Councillor Victoria Wheeler, Councillor David Whitcroft, Councillor Helen Whitcroft, Councillor Valerie White, and Councillor Richard Wilson. All those against? Unanimous.
The application has been granted, subject to conditions. Thank you very much, members of the public. If you wish to stay, you may. Members, just a quick question before we start on the rest of the evening's applications. Do you need a 2-minute toilet break, refresh break? Would you like that? Would that be agreeable? You're going to power on through? Members, next item is number 5, Watchmore Park, Watchmore Road, Camberley, Surrey. Mr. Rahman, would you like to introduce the application, please?
Thank you, Chair. This item relates to the reserved matters submission of application reference 231100, which was for a hybrid permission for the development of up to 38,000 square metres of flexible Class EG, III, B2 and B8 uses across both sites, either side of Riverside Way. As part of the original permission, all matters for this part of the development were reserved. This shows the site location plan. You can see from the aerial view the northern part of the site where Unit 1 was approved has been cleared and is being prepared for development, whilst the southern part of Riverside Way, subject to this reserved matters application, has 4 out of 5 of the buildings remaining. These are some of the photos of the site at present. We can see the area of Unit 1 has been hoarded off. And this is the current view of the frontage of the area subject to this application. All matters are reserved, so that includes access, layout, landscaping, scale and appearance. There was a parameter plan that set out the development. To this side would be no more than a total of 19,000 square metres internal area, with no single unit having more than 13,000 square metres, buildings to be no taller than 19 metres and to be used in the same flexible use class. Unit 2 to the front matches the position, scale and form of Unit 1 approved opposite, retaining a similar level of symmetry that had pre-existed here before. The location of Units 3, 4 and 5 are similar to that of the existing buildings. Access to the site would utilise the existing access points off the mini roundabouts. These are various floor plans and elevations of the units. The design follows that of the approved development, which had previously been subject to a design review panel consideration. The landscaping master plan had in essence been agreed at the original permission stage, with across the site there being an overall increase in the number of trees planted. On the whole, the reserved matter details are considered acceptable, with no objections from neighbours nor statutory consultees, and therefore recommended for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Neville. Members, do you have any questions of the officers about this application? The officer's recommendation is to grant subject to conditions. Can I have a proposer and a seconder? Proposer Councillor Garrett. Seconder Councillor Wilson. Democratic Services will take the vote.
So all those for the officer's recommendation to grant subject to conditions, please raise your hand. That looks unanimous. Thank you.
The application has been granted subject to conditions. Item number 6 on the agenda tonight is Unit A, Watchmore Point, Camberley. Ms Turney, if you would like to present the application.
Thank you, Chair. The proposal is presented to committee as the proposal is a major application. The proposal seeks permission for alterations to the existing Class B/Class 8 unit, reconfiguration of the parking facilities, loading yard, landscaping and formation of a new access road onto Watchmore Road. So the application site is located within the Watchmore Point Business Park. It comprises a vacant industrial warehouse building. The access to the unit is from the roundabout off Watchmore Road. The site surrounding area is commercial or office buildings, and the closest neighbours are located on Moorland Road. So here's some site photos of the application site. So the one on the left is the front elevation of the existing site and the car park. And then the one on the right is the northern elevation, which has the existing service yard and lorry loading bay. And then again, the existing access looking at the front of the building and another view of the existing car park. So here's the existing and the proposed site layout. So the existing site layout on the left and the proposed on the right. So these highlight the differences where the lorry loading is going to be located to the front elevation and the car parking is moved to the western elevation, or eastern, sorry. And then the new access is from Watchmore Road is located here. And here are the proposed elevation, so you can see in red the lorry loading bays and alterations to the existing building. The proposal would result in some employment space due to the internal alterations to reduce the ancillary office accommodation within the mezzanine. Due to the internal layout, the current configuration of the floor space has proven to be a significant constraint, limiting its appeal to commercial tenants. The reduced level of office space would allow for the increased number of loading bays. From a policy perspective, sufficient justification has been provided for the reduction in employment floor space, and therefore no objection is raised. The changes to the external appearance of the building raises no concerns, as these would modernise the building's external appearance and result in a more coherent appearance. The proposed new access arrangement raises no concerns in respect of its impact to the character or the design. In terms of neighbour impact, due to the location within the business park, the closest neighbouring properties are approximately 123 metres away. This separation distance, in combination with the presence of intervening industrial buildings, the highway, the boundary treatment and the established commercial character of the area, provides a substantial buffer between the operational yard and the residents. Highways, the changes result in a new access, a loading bay and service yard and parking areas. County Highway supports the additional loading bay capacity. It allows for more direct access for the HGVs and creates greater space for HGV movement within the site. An additional benefit is the separation of the service yard from the general parking area, cycle storage and pedestrian routes, resulting in a safer layout for reducing potential conflict with the HGV movement. The reduction in the number of parking spaces is not considered to result in a significant implication for the highway safety. It's considered that the proposed development is located within a core employment area and the proposal is acceptable and would not result in harm to the character of the area, neighbours, highway safety, ecology or drainage, and is therefore recommended for approval, subject to conditions and the travel auditing fee. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Turney. Members, do you have any questions of the officers concerning this application? In that case, the officer's recommendation is to grant. Was that a hand or just a...
Sorry, no.
On the ball tonight. Officer will make recommendations of the grant subject to conditions and legal agreement. Can I have a proposer and a seconder, please? Councillor Whitcroft, Councillor White. Democratic Services, would you like to do the vote?
All those for, please raise your hands. That's unanimous.
The application has been granted subject to conditions and legal agreement. Item number 7, I would like to declare that I have received a number of emails about this, and I have pushed some of those emails back to the officers to double check because there were some quite serious accusations. None of those appear to have been borne through. Item 7 is Vanya Cottage 1, Orchard Hill, Windlesham. Ms Turney, would you like to introduce the application, please?
So the proposal seeks retrospective planning permission for the erection of an annex for ancillary accommodation use to the main dwelling, including a ramp, decking and proposed erection of a boundary screen. There is an update on the sheet to take note of this as I go through the application. The application site is located within the settlement area of Windlesham. The site is accessed from Orchard Hill. To the rear of the site is an access road which provides access to a number of dwellings to the east and north-east of Orchard Hill. The planning history for the site is set out on the screen. So the first one is the certificate of lawfulness, which was granted for a mobile home for ancillary residential use, and planning permission for a similar ancillary outbuilding was granted at the same time. So these were granted at committee back in April 2025. The main difference between these applications was the method of construction. As such, these form a material planning consideration for the current application. The application considered that the applicant considers they have implemented the full planning permission due to the construction of the outbuilding did not comply with the caravan tests. However, the officer's view is the proposal has not been built in accordance with the approved plans, and therefore the proposal seeks to regularise what's been built on site. So here's the elevations of the approved outbuilding, and these are the elevations as built. So the main difference is to point out is the increase in height as it's been sited up, the additions of the terrace and the ramp, and then the proposed balcony screening, which currently isn't there. And then here is the approved block plan on the left-hand side and the current block plan of the existing situation on site. So there has been a slight change in the location of the outbuilding in relation to the boundaries. The main differences from the approved application which members need to consider this evening are the increase in the height, the additions of the terrace, the ramp and the proposed boundary screen. So these are photos from the application site. So these are taken within the application site, looking a few different angles towards the outbuilding. These are taken on the terrace looking towards the neighbour at number 2, so furthest back and then right against the number 2's boundary. And then here are 2 photos taken from in the neighbouring site, number 2 Orchard Hill. So the one on the left is taken at ground level within the garden, and the one on the right is taken from a first floor window within inside the property. The additional height and terrace and ramp proposed under this current submission doesn't alter the officer's opinion that the outbuilding is ancillary to the main dwelling, as the internal footprint and layout which was previously agreed has not been altered. Due to the level changes on the site, the outbuilding appears larger as it results in the additional height of 0.5 metres. While the outbuilding is taller than the approved scheme, it's considered this doesn't materially alter its appearance or visual impact, neither does the terrace or ramp have a materially greater impact. The outbuilding is positioned 0.5 metres from the common boundary with the neighbour at number 2 Orchard Hill, the neighbouring dwelling to the east. This is the neighbour that's most affected by the outbuilding. The neighbouring dwelling's rear elevation is located approximately 15 metres from the front elevation of the outbuilding. The terrace does provide a degree of overlooking when standing on the very end of the terrace and closest to the common boundary. It is possible to view over the fence. However, this would be for a limited duration and extent given the functional nature of the terrace for access purposes and its limited depth. The applicant has planted trees along the boundary, but these cannot be relied upon to provide permanent screening. An additional measure of a fixed screen directly adjacent to the terrace and the common boundary, as shown on the proposed plans, can be erected, and it is considered this would protect the privacy of number 2, and it is recommended to be secured via a planning condition. Officers consider, compared to the approved outbuilding, the additional height, terrace and ramp, including the balcony screen, have not resulted in additional harm to the character of the area or neighbouring property and is therefore recommended for approval subject to conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ms Turney. Members, do you have any questions of this application? Councillor Wilson? Councillor Howard?
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. Yeah, obviously it's disappointing that it wasn't constructed to the approved scheme. And you said we need to take into account the terrace, the ramp and the additional height as not really being particularly difficult because it's been built but just slightly higher and with the terrace and the ramp. But it also, in your slide that showed how close it was to the boundaries and the approved plan, maybe could we go back to that slide? Do we take into account the fact that it's closer to the boundaries than was approved as well?
The one on the left-hand side, it was the one that was approved, so the one on the right-hand side is how it is currently built. So it's now slightly more at an angle, so you could say there's an increased distance compared to the previously approved one. So here, this distance here is 0.5 metres.
Yeah, so I didn't word it very well. So when we're thinking about the difference that we're now being asked to approve, are we also being asked to approve the fact that it's in a slightly different location as well?
Yes, you can consider that as well, yes.
Sorry, Councillor Hode?
Thank you. When you said recommend approved subject to restrictions, I think it was, I'm not familiar with the previous one. Could you just remind us what those restrictions would be, please?
So the conditions that are proposed to be attached, condition number 1 is the plan numbers, condition 2 is for it to remain ancillary to the main dwelling house, and the cottages can't be separated, so it can't be rented out, it has to be used by a family member. We've removed permitted development rights to erect fences as well within the garden so that the site can't be subdivided. And then within 2 months of the decision being issued to erect the high fence privacy screen as shown on the other plans, and for it to be thereafter retained.
Councillor Wheeler?
Thank you, Chair. If I could ask the officer, please, if this application had come in as it stands, would it have been approved? Is my question number 1, and without additional conditions. The other point is if you would be kind enough, please, to go back to the image that shows the property as it's been built. That one there will do. And also the one before it, which showed, I think you showed an actual photograph. Sorry, keep going. Oh, yeah. It's that one there. The terrace would not be as overlooking had the applicant moved the path and the access to the door and not had the terrace beyond the door. I think for those of us that have received emails from the neighbours of this application, I think the degree of overlooking is open to interpretation, isn't it? We may not feel, not having to live next door to this, that it doesn't have excessive overlooking, but the images from both inside the neighbour's house and from the neighbour's garden would, I think, be reasonably considered to have a high degree of overlooking if it was us that was being directly impacted by it. So I think there's a number of things. As I said, my first question is, as it is, first time round, would it have been approved like this, given the level of overlooking, given the increase in height over and above the maximum height of the 2.5 metres or the 4 metres, which would normally be applicable, and it's that much higher. Much as I appreciate the balcony screening and the comments that it would only be used on a temporary basis, that's pure supposition from our point of view. There is nothing whatsoever to stop somebody standing on the edge of that balcony and staring into the neighbour's garden, and we have permitted them to be able to do that. Having a higher fence along the line and the planting of the trees actually almost exacerbates the problem for the neighbours, because it increases the spill of shadow in their garden. And again, unless we're planting evergreens, trees are by their very nature seasonal. So there's a couple of other conditions which I appreciate I have to ask the committee to vote upon. One of those is that the glass within the building, which is closest to the fence, so that would be the top half of the French doors, the window at the side and the window at the front, should be of obscured glass to prevent the constant ability to overlook. And the next thing, I'm totally supportive of the screening, which is directly tied to the terrace that goes around it. I do think that we should be encouraging the applicant to move the path and to actually remove the terrace as we're looking at it to the right-hand side, i.e. adjacent to the neighbour's fence, in order to minimise that overlooking. That way access is there, but any sitting out in the garden would be in the garden and not at the raised height. So I suppose what I'm asking for, would it have been approved as it is right now, if it had come in? It's question number one. And then question number two is whether or not the committee would be minded to support the opaque glazing in order to maintain residential amenity, given the overbearing impact of, rather disappointingly, particularly this is a councillor of Surrey Heath Borough Council, has decided to disregard the approved plans. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wheeler. Good luck.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to go back to Councillor Weir. So in terms, the officer recommendation before us is to approve the application. So our professional opinion is that the application before us is acceptable, and therefore if it had come forward in the first place, we'd have the same viewpoint. We don't take prejudice just because the application is retrospective, it's assessed in the same manner. And then can I just clarify which windows you were suggesting to be obscurely glazed? So it's just the front one adjacent to the boundary?
Yes, so the top half of the French doors, the one at the front, and I think on one of the other images you showed that there's actually one at the side as well. So it would be, I'm looking at the right-hand side at the side. Is the one there, or did I miss-see that? Because I didn't. If you go to the plans that were approved, and then back one, that one there looks. Which side is that? Is that the other side?
They're on the back.
Okay,
so the side elevation's the one to the right.
So no, it's the front two.
So just the top part of the French doors,
Top part of the French doors and the right-hand glazing. I think I will just go back. They're the ones that have the greatest impact on the neighbours. I mean, they all do. But they, I think, from an angle point of view, and also from a sort of a light point of view, and also I would have thought from the applicant's point of view in terms of privacy of their parents, the opaque glass may be sensible anyway, because certainly there is a nice direct view in from the neighbours directly into that property.
Just on that point, in terms of the obscure glazing, we have to obviously consider what we've already approved. The original approval, we didn't consider any obscure glazing at all. So bearing in mind that that's the established position, you then have to consider whether or not that increase in height closest to this neighbour which is going to be less than 0.5 metres. The 0.5 metres is on the other side. Is that difference significant enough and reasonable enough for you now to consider that you need to impose a condition on those windows?
If I may come back, Chair.
Councillor Wheeler?
I can't see anything there. I can see an awful lot here, and I've really not moved very much. I've certainly not moved 0.5 of a metre. I've moved a lot less than that. So actually a marginal difference can have a huge amount of difference on neighbouring impact. And certainly if this application had come in at that height originally, it would have been a condition that I would have looked for. Well, actually, I've got a feeling the officers would have possibly suggested it anyway as a first point. But secondly, certainly given the response from neighbours and their feeling of the overlooking, it's certainly a condition that I would have looked to enforce or have asked to have been enforced if it had been that much higher. So certainly in my opinion, it is more than reasonable.
Councillor Weasler, I can put that out to the other members to see if you'd like to vote on adding that condition. Can I ask for any members or Democratic Services who'd like to take that?
So if you agree with the condition to add the glaze, what's the right wording for the windows? Opaque windows.
It's opaque glazing to the top part of the windows only. And
Sorry, it's opaque glazing to the top half of the French doors and to the windows.
The window we're talking about is the kitchen window, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know what's inside it, but yeah.
You can have various levels. You can have various levels of opaqueness.
So to be clear, it's obscure glazing, I think, is the phrase. Is that correct? So it's obscure glazing. So the light would not be impacted. It would just prevent somebody standing at the window and staring into the neighbour's property.
So I'll put that to the members. Can we vote if you agree with adding the condition of obscure glazing to the front elevation of this property? Democratic Services?
So this is a show of hands. We don't minute which councillors put their hands up. But if the majority do, then it goes through. So that's agreed for the windows.
Thank you very much, members.
Sorry, just to clarify on that, you will need a time frame for when you want the applicants to put that obscure glazing in, and then obviously that would need to be retained thereafter, so you need to consider that wording as well.
What would be an acceptable time frame to have that done?
I was going to say we've allowed them 2 months to put the additional screening up around the walkway bit. So maybe that would be a reasonable time frame to keep it consistent, and also to keep it consistent from an enforcement checking point of view.
Councillor Carrott?
Can I just say, I don't disagree. I've watched far too many of these do it at home programmes where the glazing is always the thing that takes the longest. So whilst I understand the suggestion of 2 months, if it takes longer than 2 months, are we going to start enforcing that, or are we going to, if it's on order, then is that something we can live with?
As a temporary measure, they may choose to film it. They might not replace the glass entirely anyway. You can put film on, so they may choose that option anyway if you chose to impose the condition.
Ms Stoney, what do you think would be an acceptable timescale to allow that to be done?
Yeah, I'd agree that within 2 months, in line with the boundary condition, and thereafter retained as well, so it can't be removed.
Okay, thank you very much. Members, do you have any other questions for this application? Councillor Whitcroft?
Thank you. Yeah, I don't want to be a pain over this, but there's something that's bothering me, which is, and I agree with Councillor Wheeler, a half a metre. I mean, if we're talking about a few centimetres, that's one thing. But we're talking about half a metre, which is significant. We're also talking about, I believe somewhere I saw that it was a retrospective application, and I'd like to understand why that is. If it's retrospective because of some technicality, then that's one thing. But if we've got a situation here where somebody got planning permission for a perfectly reasonable addition to their back garden, and then having got that planning permission, decided that they would put in a ramp and an increased height step up into the building, as it were, thus increasing the 0.5. That seems to me to be a somewhat strange thing to do. Can we comment, please, on the retrospective nature of this, please?
So the reason it's retrospective is it hasn't fully been built in accordance with the approved plans of the previous permission. So the land level slightly slope on site, and that wasn't taken into account when they've submitted the first applications during the build. That's why it's been resulted in a slight increase in height. So adjacent to number 2 is raised 0.3 and then 0.5 to the other side. So just where the land level slope on the site is where it's been raised up. It's sat on pile foundations as well to protect the trees behind. So so they haven't been able to dig down because of the trees. It needed to be on pile foundation, and that's part of the reason it's been raised up as well.
Okay, thank you. Could I come back?
Please do.
Could we just see the photographs taken from, is it number 2, the neighbour? Could we see those, please? So, self-evidently, 0.5 metre is significant in terms of that building. And I think somebody made the point, I don't know who it was, that if it wasn't significant, why is screening required?
So on this side, it's not been raised up 0.5 metre because this is the highest land level point. The other side is on the highest, it's been raised up the highest.
Councillor Whitcroft, does that answer your questions?
It does, and I'm going to shut up. Thank you.
Members, do we have any other questions for the officers on this application? If not, the officer's recommendation is to grant subject to conditions, including the new additions you voted on this evening. Democratic Services, can I help you for the quote for the vote?
We got a proposer and a seconder?
Yeah, sorry. May I have a proposer and a seconder? Councillor Hode. And a seconder, Councillor Thompson.
So all those for the officer's recommendation to grant, subject to conditions, please raise your hands. That's unanimous.
Item number 8, refuse disposal compound, Swift Lane, Bagshot. Ms Turney, would you like to present this application, please?
The application seeks to remove Condition 5, EV charging, and Condition 6, cycle storage of planning permission 250236 FFU for the change of use from sui generis to Class BA open storage for HGV and coach storage. The application site was the former Bagshot Recycling Centre. The Bagshot Community Recycling Centre closed in March 2025, and there's no known plans to replace the facility. The change of use has previously been approved. This proposal seeks the removal of the Condition 5 and Condition 6. No other changes are proposed compared to the original application. Previously, the County Highways Authority raised no objection at the time, subject to conditions including Condition 5 and 6. The reason the applicant seeking removal of the conditions is the site is for the storage of up to 7 HGVs or coaches with no staff based on the site and no permanent buildings. a medium to long-term vehicle storage, and there is no realistic demand for cycle parking. The vehicles to be stored are not electric, and installation of the charging infrastructure would impede essential manoeuvring space within the yard. The County Highways Authority have reviewed the information contained within the technical letter and agrees with the justification provided. Whilst EV charging and cycle parking is generally important for promoting sustainable forms of transport, given the scale of the use and the nature of the operation, this would not be operationally possible. This amendment, the amended proposal doesn't change the conclusion in terms of the impact to the greenbelt, the character and appearance of the area, or residential amenities. The proposed removal of condition 5 and 6 would not result in adverse impacts to the highway, with no objection raised by County Highways Authority, and is therefore proposed to recommend approval subject to the original conditions, subject to removal of conditions 5 and 6. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ms Turney. Members, do you have any questions of officers for this application? Councillor Wheeler.
Once removed, if the site is used for a different purpose, presumably they're removed in perpetuity, or is there any way of tying the removal of these conditions, given that they were on highway matters, to this specific use and this specific operator from this site?
It would be unreasonable to impose that condition because it would make it a personal permission, but also due to the size of the site, it's unlikely that any future occupier, again, would have the same difficulties manoeuvring on the site. For any storage facilities, it wouldn't be appropriate to have the cycle or EV charging on the site.
Councillor Garrett.
So just following on from Councillor Willie's question, if for some reason in the future it does get sold to someone else, and they put something else in, we won't use the reasoning that we've already got rid of it, so we don't have to put it back in.
If they came in for another use outside of the B8 use, they'd need to apply for planning permission, and therefore it may be appropriate to require the EV or cycle storage depending on the use proposed.
Members, do we have any other questions, officers, for this application? The officer's recommendation is a grant. Can I have a proposer and a seconder, please? Councillor Garrett. Councillor Hoff. Democratic Services, would you like to continue the vote?
So all those for the officer's recommendation to grant, subject to conditions, please raise your hands. And it's not unanimous, so I'll read out. So when I say your name, if you take your hand down. So we've got Councillor Sean Garrett, Councillor Julie Hode, Councillor Dave Hoff, Councillor David O'Mahony, Councillor Kevin Thompson, Councillor David Whitcroft, Councillor Helen Whitcroft, Councillor Valerie White, and Councillor Richard Wilson. All those against? Councillor Victoria Wheeler. Any abstentions? No abstentions.
The application has been granted, subject to conditions. Would you like a breather, or should we just go straight on to the last item? Item number 9, 33 Portsmouth Road, Camberley.
Thank you, Chair.
Neville,
Thank you, Chair. This application relates to 33 Old Portsmouth Road for the erection of a replacement single-storey rear extension. It is before members today as the applicant is an employee of the council. The site is located in the settlement boundaries in a residential area. Here we can see views of the existing conservatory. The existing conservatory is modest in size and scale. The proposal seeks to replace the existing conservatory, being located on a similar footprint and being of a similar size. There would be a marginal increase to the height of the extension, but overall it would be considered acceptable in character and neighbour amenity terms and is therefore recommended for a grant of approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Neville. Members, do you have any questions on this application? Okay, the officer's recommendation is grant, subject to conditions. May I have a proposer and a seconder? Well, that was quick. Look at that. Councillor Thompson, proposer. Councillor Wilson, seconder. Democratic Services, would you like to take the vote?
So all those for, please raise your hands. That looks unanimous.
The application is granted subject to conditions. I now would like to say this meeting is over.